Isn't there a similar story with Vietnam that has become a national scandal recently, where there was a CIA analyst, an intelligence analyst in Vietnam, who was supposed to assess the troop strength of the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese troops, and would send reports in that were, according to a CBS News report, discounted by Westmoreland and the military establishment. Do you have any position on that issue, which is now, I guess, Westmoreland sued CBS, claiming that they defamed him. TV Guide has had giant articles about it, etc. Do you have any insight into this issue?
Well, I know a whole series of other people who were in Vietnam who ran into the same problem. In terms of that specific issue, it's clear to me that what happened there, whether Westmoreland is suing them on the basis of whether he knew or didn't know, is that they really didn't want the facts to come out that they were not winning the war in Vietnam, just like they don't want the facts to come out that the government they're supporting in El Salvador is losing the war. Because the whole basis of this is to rather than do, you know, what any American president should do when this country's in a crisis, is to get on television and say, this is what we have to do there. We just discovered that the Soviet Union is going to invade El Salvador, and that we have to do this, that, and the other thing. No, what they do is, because they know that's not true. And in terms of Vietnam, for instance, one of the persons I interviewed in the film, and this is interesting, if you just remember the recent El Salvador election results, his name is Paul Sacwa. He was the chief of the Vietnam desk when Colby made his first tour in Vietnam. And he was reading to me cables of how the Vietnamese intelligence service was a completely owned adjunct of the CIA then and to the end. They were rigging the elections. He had these cables coming in, you know, were coming in there. There's reports from his people. And so, I mean, there you have, this is Diem, who the CIA later arranges to eliminate. And here you have, you know, a government which invites the United States in, which the United States, first of all, brings to power. And so when it's like inviting yourself in, you know, it's like having yourself a big
and then manipulating the elections.
They're manipulating the elections so that you can bring in someone who will invite you in and make sure that someone who wants to kick you out. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that in terms of the Sam Adams story. But the problem is, how do you get accurate intelligence then? If you're discouraging anyone who is trying to be honest and report information which he believes an American president should know, in order precisely to preclude what happened in Iran, was, you know, finally, I mean, the relationships that the United States have with Iran are non-existent because there's 30 years of secret history.
This is an important point, that the CIA is not really an intelligence agency. They're not providing accurate intelligence, which they're supposed to do by their charter. Rather, they're an arm of covert action. And isn't there something like 6 major issues where the CIA had either inaccurate information, or if they did, in the case of Iran and some Vietnam reports, they were at one place in the bureaucracy kept from the political decision people. So that they've really been a major failure as an intelligence agency.
No, because CBS intelligence really is not what concerns you. You're dealing, you know, at the top level, you're dealing with economic interests. You're dealing with, why should the President of the United States listen to some little flunky CIA analyst who says, look, this thing in Iran is going to blow up in our faces, people are just going to get mad at us, they're going to kick us out, this whole thing is going to go to hell. When, at the same time, somebody's calling up and saying, look, you know, the Shah's our friend, and none of that, but we have major dealings. You know, we're getting $300 million by selling them helicopters. And you see, you have the irony that Iran is fighting the war with Iraq now with arms that the Shah bought. And the United States have every reason to believe that they're encouraging the Iraqis, but because, you know, they see the Iranian process as very dangerous, because it's a nationalist process. And if it spreads over into Saudi Arabia, and the Saudis realize that that the kings of Saudi Arabia have sold them down the river and will keep on selling them down the river forever, that'll have an impact. But and you know, one of the most interesting examples in an interesting book, it just came out about the CIA intervention in Guatemala on the basis of documents released. And it's clear that in 1953 or 54, when the CIA got involved in Guatemala, it had nothing at all to do with this communist threat. As a matter of fact, the CIA arranged to plant themselves Russian weapons in Nicaragua and arranged Somoza's discovery of them so that they could justify the communist threat. This comes out, these are actual CIA documents which state this. Now let's say there was a Soviet threat to Guatemala, and if the CIA is any kind of intelligence organization, it should be able to say and give to the president this information, and the president should be able to say, we are now invading Guatemala because there are. And if you go down every instance, you go down to Guatemala, you go down to Santo Domingo, the famous LBJ thing in Santo Domingo, where he came up with 35 known communists. And these people were enough of a threat to send in 30,000 Marines.
This is in the Dominican Republic in 1965,
yes.
I think.
You go down every instance like that.
Right.
There always is the first thing, the other side is going to do this. Or, you know, in the case of Chile, you have the famous remark that Henry Kissinger made, which was then publicized after the Allende government was overthrown, that Chile is like, the only threat to Chile is it's a dagger pointed to the heart of Antarctica. And nevertheless, they go down, they destroy the government, they kill the president, and they feel perfectly proper to do this. They feel no problem at all. They feel...
You mentioned some people, analysts and all, who apparently try to develop some information relative to the truth in the CIA. Has there been any dissidence in the CIA itself? Has there been any struggles from below and discussed with what the CIA is doing, other than the people who get out and write books?
Yes, well, you see, what's interesting is that if you take the Washington Press, you know, there are all kinds of reasons stories appear. And often stories are leaked by somebody in the CIA or another intelligence agency who wants to get even with their boss, they want to eliminate their boss. You have to realize that these things are bureaucracy just like an insurance company, and people have all kinds of reasons for telling. And for instance, Jesse Leaf, who entered the CIA, he told me the story. He entered the CIA, he had come in with a younger generation of people who had actually been at American universities, and the best American universities during the anti-war days. And so when he entered, his generation of CIA people had a different attitude, like they insisted on child care for their children. In 1970, actually, there was a furor in the CIA when the United States and Nixon sent the troops into Cambodia, and they had sit-down strikes, they had petitions. And
in the CIA itself, CIA employees.
I'd never heard that.
What Jesse Leaf told me. And they're in the kind of situation where you see it's very difficult work, in the sense that the kind of people that the CIA looks for are motivated, they're intelligent, they're aggressive, and you have to believe in what you're doing. And many of the people who later became the CIA's biggest critics, like Philip Agee, he joined the CIA, had gone to Catholic school all his life, believed when he joined the CIA he was defending God, democracy, family, anything you can think of. Someone like John Stockwell, same thing. And when you start realizing that you're defending none of those things, as a matter of fact, you're destroying those things. And I'm not even talking in terms of the immorality of the operations, but the CIA is creating the conditions for everyone in the rest of the world to hate this country, because they're not paying attention to what our American presidents are saying. We're the ones who have to listen to Ronald Reagan. Thank God. They're paying attention to what this country is doing to help them. The people in El Salvador are not paying attention to what Ronald Reagan is saying. He's trying to bring democracy. They know who's bombing them, and they know where the bombs are coming from, and they know where the shells are coming from, and they know who's training the troops, and they're seeing what those troops are doing. And there's no way you're ever going to convince, you might convince a student that this is right or this is wrong on the basis of abstractions. But when you're a peasant and you've just seen your neighbor's family taken out and all shot down with American bullets, there's no possible way that they're going to buy a Ronald Reagan speech next time around.